When I began my journey of improving my English, I realized very quickly that this was not simply about learning another subject in school. It was not just about passing an exam or impressing people in conversation. It was about energy. Words carry energy, and language is one of the most powerful forms of energy we can ever use. The way you speak creates vibrations that affect how people see you, how opportunities come to you, and how you see yourself. English, for me, became a channel of confidence, a medium through which I could expand possibilities that once felt impossible. Every new word I learned, every sentence I constructed, was more than vocabulary. It was a frequency shift that changed the way I connected with the world. At first, I thought English was just about memorization. Grammar rules, word lists, pronunciation drills. But very soon I discovered something deeper. When I spoke English with hesitation, I noticed the energy I carried was low. People responded less, and I felt weaker inside. When I spoke, even with mistakes, but with confidence, my energy lifted and people leaned in. That's when it struck me. Language is not just a tool for communication. It's an instrument for energy transmission. The power of English lies not only in its global reach, but also in the confidence and belief it builds inside you. It allows you to step into rooms where once you felt invisible, to express ideas that once stayed locked in your mind, to connect with people who once felt unreachable. Improving my English was not a linear path. There were countless moments of doubt, times I felt embarrassed when I mispronounced a word, times I wanted to quit because others laughed. But here's the truth, those moments carried energy too. Every mistake was a vibration pushing me to grow stronger. Every stumble was a lesson in resilience. I realized that energy is never wasted. It either pushes you forward if you channel it, or it holds you back if you let it turn into shame. I chose to channel it. I chose to let every wrong answer, every awkward pause, every correction become fuel instead of failure. That shift changed everything. The more I leaned into this energy, the more I began to notice how different life felt. Speaking English gave me a sense of freedom. Suddenly, books that were once closed to me opened wide. Seminars, speeches, and mentors who spoke in English became accessible. I could listen, learn, and absorb knowledge from people across the world. Each new phrase I understood was like unlocking another door in a hallway filled with endless opportunities. And each time I spoke in English, no matter how imperfectly, I felt a spark inside me that said, "You are growing, you are expanding, you are capable of more than you ever believed." What many people don't realize is that language has a frequency, just like music. When you speak words of power, belief, and clarity, you tune yourself to a higher frequency. When you speak with fear, self-doubt, or negativity, you lower your energy. English, for me, became a daily practice of tuning into that higher frequency. It wasn't about sounding perfect. It was about sounding aligned with who I wanted to become. The more I practiced, the more aligned I became. And as my energy shifted, so did the opportunities around me. I started attracting conversations I never thought I could have. I started being invited to places I never imagined being. People listened differently, not because my grammar was flawless, but because my energy was strong. There's a hidden secret in learning English, or any skill for that matter, that most people overlook. It's not just the knowledge you gain, it's the transformation you undergo. The process of learning forces you to stretch, to step outside your comfort zone, to embrace failure, and to keep going when it feels uncomfortable. That process builds a kind of strength that stays with you far beyond language. English gave me words, yes, but more importantly, it gave me courage. It gave me a sense of identity. It gave me the belief that if I can master this, I can master anything. And that belief became the foundation of everything else in my life. Every time I opened my mouth to speak, I was not just practicing English. I was affirming to myself that I could stand tall, I could express myself, I could contribute something valuable. And as I improved, people began to respond differently. They began to take me seriously, to respect my presence, to see me as someone with ideas worth listening to. That shift in how others saw me created an even greater shift in how I saw myself. It was no longer about learning a language. It was about stepping into a new version of myself. Language is energy, and energy shapes destiny. The moment you understand this, learning stops being a burden and starts being a liberation. English opened doors I didn't even know existed. It became a bridge to new relationships, new knowledge, new opportunities, and a new self-image. What I once saw as a limitation turned into one of my greatest sources of strength, and the energy I discovered through this journey continues to expand every single day when I look back at my journey. The greatest transformation did not happen in classrooms or through textbooks. It happened in the quiet battles inside my mind. There were countless moments when fear whispered in my ear, telling me I would never master English, that I would always be behind, that people would always laugh at me when I spoke. Fear was powerful. It had the ability to freeze me, to hold me back, to make me remain silent when I wanted to express myself. But in those same moments, there was another voice, a softer but stronger one. It was the voice of faith. Faith said, "You can learn, you can grow, you are capable of more than you know." That shift from fear to faith became the foundation of my success. Fear shows up in many forms. Sometimes it comes as embarrassment when you pronounce a word incorrectly and people smile or correct you. Sometimes it comes as hesitation when you have the answer in your mind, but you don't dare to raise your hand or open your mouth. Sometimes it appears as doubt, whispering that you will never be good enough, that others are smarter, more fluent, more confident than you. Fear feeds on comparison. It convinces you to look at others and conclude that you are less. I lived in that space for a long time, shrinking my voice, avoiding opportunities, letting fear make the decisions for me. But faith, on the other hand, requires a different kind of vision. Faith is the ability to see the end result before it is visible. Faith is looking at yourself struggling with a sentence and still believing that one day you will speak with clarity. Faith is facing rejection, yet knowing deep down that every no is bringing you closer to a yes. I had to train myself daily to lean into faith instead of fear. It was not easy because fear is loud, fear is urgent, fear always shouts in your mind. Faith is calm, but once you choose it, it grows stronger and stronger. The real breakthrough came when I realized that fear and faith both require belief. Fear believes in failure that hasn't happened yet. Faith believes in success that hasn't manifested yet. Both are invisible, both live in the imagination, but only one moves you forward. The moment I understood this, I made a decision. If I am going to believe in something, why not believe in the possibility that empowers me instead of the possibility that paralyzes me? From that day, every time fear showed up, I deliberately replaced it with faith. There were moments when my fear was overwhelming. Standing up in a group to introduce myself in English, I could feel my heart racing, my palms sweating, my mind searching for excuses to sit down. In those moments, I reminded myself, fear is temporary, but the regret of not trying is permanent. Faith gave me the courage to speak anyway. And every time I spoke, even imperfectly, even with mistakes, my faith grew stronger. What once felt terrifying became manageable, and what once seemed impossible became natural. Faith did not only help me learn English, it transformed the way I approached life. When I shifted into faith, I stopped waiting for the perfect time. I stopped needing every condition to be ideal before I took action. Faith taught me that action creates clarity, not the other way around. It was faith that pushed me to read books I once thought were too difficult, to listen to speakers I once believed were beyond my level, to join conversations even when I knew I would stumble. And with each step, my confidence expanded. Fear tells you that one mistake defines you, but faith tells you that one mistake refines you. Fear tries to convince you that people are judging you, but faith reminds you that people are too busy with their own lives to think about your small errors. Fear says stay silent, but faith says your voice matters. Fear looks at the mountain and says it's too high, while faith looks at the same mountain and says one step at a time will get me there. Choosing faith over fear was not a one-time decision. It was a daily practice, and it still is. The most beautiful part of living in faith is the freedom it creates. Fear is a prison that keeps you locked in the same place. Faith is the key that unlocks new doors. Once I started to trust the process, opportunities began to appear. People I never thought would listen started listening. Challenges I once avoided became chances to grow. Fear shrank my world, but faith expanded it. That expansion is what allowed me to not only improve my English, but also reshape my entire destiny. The truth is, fear and faith will always exist. They are two sides of the same coin. The difference lies in which one you choose to give your energy to. I chose faith, not because it was easier, but because it was the only way to grow. Faith turned my hesitation into courage, my doubt into determination, and my silence into a voice that could be heard. And that simple but powerful shift from fear to faith changed everything about the way I live, the way I learn, and the way I see myself. Negative feelings used to be the biggest obstacle in my life. Whenever I tried to improve myself, whenever I tried to learn something new, they showed up like shadows that never left me alone. I felt insecure when I could not express myself in English. I felt embarrassed when people laughed at my mistakes. I felt discouraged when others spoke fluently while I struggled to find the right words. These negative emotions seemed like chains that tied me down, keeping me from moving forward. For a long time, I thought they were signs that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't capable of achieving more. But as I continued on my journey, I realized something that completely changed my perspective. Negative feelings are not barriers, they are fuel. They are raw energy, and when you know how to transform that energy, you can use it to propel yourself forward. Think about it. Anger, fear, jealousy, insecurity, all of them carry a strong intensity. That intensity is energy. When I felt anger because people underestimated me, I learned to turn that anger into motivation. Instead of feeling small, I told myself, I will prove through my actions, through my learning, through my progress, that I am more than what they see. That anger, once destructive, became a powerful driving force that pushed me to study harder, to practice longer, to show up every single day even when I didn't feel like it. The same happened with fear. Fear used to freeze me. It made me avoid conversations, avoid opportunities, avoid putting myself out there. But then I started to look at fear differently. I realized fear was simply energy waiting to be redirected. The faster my heart beat, the more energy I had inside me. Instead of letting it paralyze me, I started channeling it into action. If my fear told me, "Don't speak," I forced myself to speak anyway, using that rush of energy to fuel my courage. Slowly, I discovered that fear could be converted into excitement. The nervousness before speaking in English transformed into anticipation, the same way an athlete feels before stepping onto the field. Jealousy was another negative feeling I faced. I looked at people who spoke English fluently and felt frustrated that I was so far behind. But jealousy too has energy. It shows you what you truly want. Instead of letting jealousy eat away at me, I used it as a compass. I asked myself, if I envy their fluency, doesn't that mean I desire it? And if I desire it, why not commit fully to achieving it? Jealousy then became admiration and inspiration. I started learning from those who were better than me instead of resenting them. I studied how they spoke, how they carried themselves, and I applied those lessons to my own growth. Insecurity was perhaps the hardest negative feeling to overcome. That quiet voice inside that said, "You will never be good enough, no matter how hard you try." At first, it seemed impossible to silence it. But then I realized insecurity is also a signal. It is your mind's way of telling you that you are stepping into unfamiliar territory, that you are growing. If you were not doing anything challenging, you would not feel insecure. That meant my insecurity was proof that I was stretching beyond my comfort zone. Once I understood this, I stopped fighting it. I embraced it. I carried my insecurity with me while I kept practicing, kept learning, kept moving forward. Over time, the very thing that made me feel small became evidence that I was evolving. The real secret lies in transformation. Negative feelings are not meant to be suppressed, ignored, or denied. They are meant to be harnessed. Energy cannot be destroyed, but it can be redirected. When I felt like giving up, I channeled that despair into determination. When I felt like I didn't belong, I used that discomfort to push myself into environments where I could grow. When I felt frustration, I used it as fire to fuel my persistence. Every single negative emotion carried within it the power to transform my life, as long as I chose not to run from it, but to work with it. What surprised me most was how much stronger I became through this process. Positive feelings are beautiful, but they are not always strong enough to drive massive change. Negative emotions, when transformed, carry a much greater intensity. They have the ability to push you further, to keep you awake when others are sleeping, to make you practice when others are relaxing, to fuel a vision so strong that it cannot be ignored. I realized that my greatest progress came not during times of comfort, but during times of discomfort, when my negative feelings were the strongest. Those moments forced me to dig deeper, to find strength I didn't know I had, to keep going when quitting seemed easier. As I began to live this truth, I started to look at life differently. Instead of fearing negative emotions, I welcomed them. They became signs that I was alive, that I cared deeply about my goals, that I was in the process of transformation. Each time I felt fear, I knew growth was near. Each time I felt anger, I knew I had energy to push myself further. Each time I felt insecure, I knew I was moving into new territory. What once felt like enemies became my greatest allies, and that shift in perspective gave me the resilience to keep going no matter what came my way. When I first started trying to improve my English, I thought it was all about self, discipline, and effort alone. I believed that if I worked hard enough, if I memorized enough words, if I practiced long enough, then I would eventually succeed. But as I moved forward, I discovered something that completely changed the way I looked at growth. Environment shapes destiny. No matter how determined you are, the environment you immerse yourself in has the power to either pull you forward or hold you back. The voices you hear daily, the people you surround yourself with, the books you read, the videos you watch, and the conversations you engage in, all of these quietly sculpt your mind and influence your results. In the beginning, my environment was not supportive of my goals. Many around me doubted my efforts. Some laughed when I tried to speak English. Others dismissed the importance of learning and told me it was unnecessary. Being in that atmosphere drained my energy, and I often felt tempted to give up. But then I realized that if I wanted to change my life, I had to change my environment. I started paying attention to what I was feeding my mind. I reduced time with people who pulled me down and increased time with people, even if only through books and videos, who lifted me up. This shift was not instant, but slowly it began to transform my thinking and eventually my results. I began surrounding myself with the English language in every possible way. I put English books on my desk and carried them with me everywhere. I listened to speeches, podcasts, and conversations in English, even if I didn't understand everything at first. I watched movies and shows with subtitles, pausing and repeating until the words made sense. I changed the settings on my phone and computer to English, so that my daily interactions were naturally in the language I was trying to master. By doing this, I created an environment where English wasn't just a subject I studied for an hour a day. It became the air I breathed. More importantly, I sought out people who were on the same journey or who were already ahead of me. When you place yourself among people who are growing, their energy naturally pulls you upward. I remember the first time I joined a group where everyone was practicing English. At first, I felt nervous, insecure, and far behind compared to the others. But then I realized that being in that environment was exactly what I needed. Their confidence inspired me, their corrections guided me, and their progress showed me what was possible. Being around them, I felt compelled to rise to their level, and step by step, I did. What I learned is that environment does not just influence what you do. It influences what you believe about yourself. When I was surrounded by voices of doubt, I doubted myself. But when I surrounded myself with voices of encouragement, of growth, of possibility, my self-image expanded. I began to see myself differently. I no longer saw myself as someone struggling with English. I began to see myself as someone becoming fluent, someone capable of growth, someone worthy of opportunities. That self-image then changed how I acted, and my actions produced new results. The truth is, no one succeeds alone. Every great achievement is shaped by an environment that nurtures it. A seed, no matter how full of potential, cannot grow on a rock. It needs soil, sunlight, and water. In the same way, our minds cannot grow in an environment of negativity, doubt, and limitation. They need encouragement, knowledge, and inspiration. By deliberately choosing what I exposed myself to, I created the fertile soil in which my growth could take place. Another important part of shaping my environment was removing distractions. The environment is not only about people, it is also about habits and surroundings. I had to let go of activities that wasted my time and energy, endless scrolling, meaningless conversations, and hours of idleness. I replaced them with practices that fed my growth: reading, writing, speaking, listening, and reflecting. I set up my room in a way that reminded me of my goals. Notes with new vocabulary covered the walls. Affirmations about growth and learning were on my desk. I created a physical environment that kept me aligned with my vision. As time went on, I noticed how much easier it became to stay consistent. In the wrong environment, motivation feels like a constant struggle. You're always pushing against resistance. But in the right environment, growth feels natural, almost effortless, because everything around you supports it. I didn't have to force myself as much anymore, because my environment itself was pushing me in the right direction. Eventually, this idea expanded beyond just learning English. I saw how environment influenced every area of life: my confidence, my mindset, my opportunities, even my destiny. By changing my environment, I wasn't just learning a language, I was rewriting the path of my future. I began to meet people I never would have met otherwise. I began to access opportunities that were once invisible to me, and I began to see possibilities for my life that I had never imagined before. What started as a shift in the environment around me became a transformation within me, and that transformation continues to shape everything I do.